Welcome to Coach Bennett's podcast, where every run has a purpose, where kindness is hardcore, where this is about running, and this is not about running, where every starting line is a finish line in disguise, where rambling still gets you where you need to be, where pineapple will never ruin your pizza, and the sodas, adult and not adult kind, are always cold, and where there is room on the starting line for everybody. I'm Coach Bennett. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. Let's get started. Welcome to episode 131 of Coach Bennett's podcast. This one is entitled, Why I Didn't Break 4. That's right. We're going autobiographical for this one. Why I didn't break 4. And by 4, I mean 4 minutes. And I'm talking about 4 minutes in the mile, because I didn't break 4 minutes in the mile. So here's going to be the story of why, because it was one of my biggest goals. When I started running, the sub 4 barrier, it's a magical barrier. 4 laps on the track, well, 4 laps and 9 meters, but 4 laps on the track, you got to average under 60 seconds. And if you can do that, you get to call yourself a sub 4 minute miler forever. And I dedicated a long time. I ran hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of miles in the hope that I would break 4 minutes, and I didn't. So this is that story. And now I'm thinking, maybe I didn't run tens of thousands of miles. I mean, if you think for, we'll say, a good 10 years, maybe 12 years, I was trying to do this, at least dedicated to one day doing it. 12 miles, maybe it's not 10. Anyway, the point is, I ran a lot trying to do this, and I got close. How close? Well, maybe I'll tell you by the end, but right now the point is, I want to go through the reasons why I didn't break 4. Because here's the thing. I believe I was talented enough, and I believe I may have been in shape to do it, actually, a couple of times, but I didn't. So we're going to break it down. And I think this is a good exercise. One, it's me maybe expunging some demons from my soul. I don't think about not breaking 4 minutes every day. It's like every other day. And it's not even a big deal. It's usually when I'm in the shower, because then no one can tell that I'm crying. But seriously, I'm being not serious. I don't cry all the time in the shower. I cry sometimes in the shower. The point here is, looking back at my career, I think, with a critical eye. That doesn't mean critical to beat down. It was critical to lift up, okay, to help and to learn from my career, the good and the not so good, the victories and the successes and the failures that I had, because doing that made me a better coach. And I always believed that there are mistakes that you can make, there are mess-ups, screw-ups, bad tactics, terrible strategy, poor training decisions that you can make as an athlete, that you can actually make as a coach. And if you learn from them, you can share those mistakes. You can share those setbacks. You can share those struggles in the hope that who you're sharing them with doesn't need to make the same mistakes as you. See, I never understood that. Like some people are like, well, they're just going to have to learn for themselves. Yeah, or you could share with them, this is a mistake that you don't need to make. I made this mistake. You don't need to make it. And I think that was one of the reasons why I experienced some success as a coach, because my athletes didn't make the same mistakes as I did, or at least they rarely made the same mistakes I made, because I was very open about how I screwed up and messed up and took steps back while I was an athlete. I wanted them to know that. So my hope is that by sharing with you some of the reasons why I didn't achieve a goal that was very important to me, maybe you won't make the same mistakes that I did. And if you don't make the same mistakes that I did, you're in a better position. This is good. Yes, you can learn from your own mistakes. What I would ask you is to share the learnings from those mistakes with the people you care about, or the people that you work with, or the people you work for.
So from a coaching perspective, I work for the athlete. So I've mentioned repeatedly that the foundation of a good coach-athlete relationship is honesty. And if I can't be honest about the mistakes I've made, then I'm not being honest. And if I'm not being honest, I'm not being a good coach. So we're going to talk about how I didn't break 4, or I should say why I didn't break 4. And I'll start with one that jumped out at me. And it was, I didn't strength train. I'm not saying I didn't strength train at all, but I didn't strength train consistently or intelligently. And part of that was just the state of the sport. So when I was running in high school, when I was running in college, it wasn't as big of a deal as it is now. It's such a part of the training in the sport of running now to have really thought out strength training. And that wasn't the case. So when I was in high school, I remember we would do this little strength circuit. And I remember it was new because we had an alum that came back that was running at Arkansas. And he came back and said, yeah, this is what we do. Now, we didn't have the same facilities, obviously, that they had. So we tried to, MacGyver it all together. And we did this maybe 2 days a week, 3 days a week for 3 weeks. And then we just stopped doing it. And part of it was because we didn't know. We didn't know. And looking back, high school, college, and then even post-collegiately, there was very, very little in the way of strength training. And I think inherently knew strength training was important, but I didn't know what to do. And as a result, I think that was something that kept me from breaking 4. Now, none of this alone is going to be something I can point at and say, you know what? I didn't break 4 because of that specific reason. This should be taken in its entirety, the entire episode, because all of this added together led to me coming up short, or led to me not getting under 4 minutes. And it's interesting that the first thing that came out was strength training, because when I went back and I started coaching high school, it was one of the focuses that I had. We were in the weight room a couple of days a week, basically all year, and there was great diversity in what we were doing. I wanted to build strength in a lot of different ways. And also, this was a high school team, so these are teenagers. You also have to take into account where athletes are in their stage of fitness and strength and growing. And you have to adapt to the athlete. The athlete, we always focus on adapting to the work. But you have to remember, in order to train an athlete well, you have to adapt the training to the athlete first. So then the athlete can then properly adapt to the training. So if you're a coach, or even if you're an athlete, remember, you can't force training onto an athlete. You can't do that. You could have, we'll just use this as an example. You could have 2 athletes. You can pick the age because the age doesn't matter. You have 2 athletes at different stages of development, whether that means background in the sport. You could have one athlete that has been running fairly consistently for a few years. Then you have another athlete that's brand new to the sport, that has never done any strength training. Whereas the other athlete maybe was like me, had done some strength training on and off inconsistently, but had spent time in the weight room. Okay, I'm not giving those athletes the same strength training routine initially. I can't do that. And depending on the type of athlete they are, they may never be doing the same routines. So looking back, I realize if I had incorporated strength training into my training, my overall training for years, not just my last year running, but if this had been something that I had been developing and working on, finding weaknesses, building strengths, doing all those different things, and adjusting as I changed as an athlete, physically, emotionally, and mindfully, I think I would have had a better shot at breaking 4. And I think what you need to do is figure out what kind of strength training you need, what kind of strength training you can consistently do, and work with those 2 things. Because you may need one type of strength training and you're doing the opposite. you also may want to do a type of strength training that really doesn't have the benefits that you want it to have because you can't do it consistently or you don't have access to what you need. So again, figure out what you need and also figure out what you can do. Those two things have to work in concert, all right? So strength training, one of the reasons why I didn't break 4. Okay, another one was I partied too much. Yeah, I partied too much. And as my career went on, I partied less and less and less, but I should have partied even less than I actually did. And the reason why is, well, it's pretty simple. When you party, and for me, that meant I was drinking lots of beer and having a late night, it takes days to recover from that. That's just if you're an average person. If you're doing extraordinary things, which if you're trying to train for a marathon or a half marathon or break 4 in the mile, you're doing extraordinary things. You're asking your body to do extraordinary things. You're asking your body to recover in an extraordinary way so it can continue to do extraordinary things. So when you do something that's so ordinary, like drink way too much beer and stay out way too late, now you can't do the work you need to do that you want to do the next day, nor can you recover from the work you need and want to do the next day. In fact, you now have to divert some of the resources you have internally to recover from your late night partying away from just you recovering from the long run you did prior to going out or the work you're about to do. So you're robbing yourself of a finite amount of resources that you have in your body at any given time to do extraordinary things. We don't have an unlimited amount of fuel. You have to replenish it. You have to recover from great efforts. So when I was going out, even as infrequently as I was towards the end of my competitive career, it was too much. If I could go back, I would probably get rid of, and this is, again, I'm making up a statistic here, but you'll get the point, 98.5% of the nights that I went out and had some beers, I would have gotten rid of all of them. Well, all of the 98.5%. There's like 1.5% where it's like that was a really fun time and it was with friends and it was at the right time of year and I didn't have to run. It might have been in between seasons. But the point is I think at the time I was too immature to realize that, one, this wasn't helping, and I don't think I had a strong enough backbone to say, no, I'm staying in. And I wish I had stayed in. I really do, because it wasn't worth it. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying don't have fun. I'm not saying don't go out and party. What I'm saying is you might want to think about whether or not you need to, whether you or not you really want to party as much as you do. So, for me, I could have had just as much fun not partying like that 98.5% of the time. And here's the other thing. I think if I had enough self-confidence at those young ages, I think I also could have gone out and not drank. I could have gone out and left earlier, but I didn't. And I can point back and say that lack of self-confidence to feel like I don't need to do this and I can go home, that self-confidence would have shown up on the track. And I think part of the reason why I wasn't as confident on the track was because I knew I hadn't done the work I could have done. Not the work that, I wish I would have done and I wish I could have run 100-mile weeks. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about basic foundational stuff I should have done and didn't do because I had screwed up and partied too much. And that translated to a lack of confidence because I was still trying to achieve goals that I had set originally with the assumption I was going to do all the work. So if I had gone to the track and said, you know what, this is the work that you've done, we're now going to adjust the goals, I think I would have been more confident on the track. And I didn't do that. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, okay? And if you're following me, what I'm trying to say is, 1, I partied too much. 2, that affected my confidence. And 3, I didn't adjust my goals. I should have slowed down my goals. I should have said, you know what? I'm not going to try to break 4 minutes this season because I haven't done the work to break 4 minutes. Let's try to break 4:10 because we're not breaking 4 minutes. We haven't done the work. The point here is there was this cascading effect from partying too much. It led to low confidence, and I didn't change my goals. So as a result, this was like a vicious circle. So then I didn't hit the goals, and my confidence dropped even more. And then I figured, well, things aren't going well. Who cares if I go out or not? And then you start going out more. And it doesn't lead to happiness. I'll put it to that way. And it sure didn't lead to success on the track. So that was another thing I can point to, at least early on. Later on, it really didn't happen very much because at that point I was like, look, I'm trying to achieve these goals, and that was what was most important to me. Okay, here's another one. I ran too hard. Well, here's the thing, and I want, as I'm going through this, and I'm going to be reminding you over and over again, I'm not pointing to one thing during 1 year. I'm going to point to a number of different things over a pretty long career that, again, if I could just, with a brush, say, if I had done this differently, if I had fixed this, if I had adjusted, I would have had a better chance to break 4 minutes. So for my next one, I ran too hard. And what I mean by that is I literally ran too hard on almost everything I did. My recovery runs were probably too fast. My speed workouts were a little bit too fast. My long runs were too fast. And the reason why was I was trying to prove to myself that I was good enough every single day. And I also thought that the harder I trained, the faster I was going to race. And that's not always the case. The number one key is consistency and progression. And I think if I look back at my running logs, there wasn't that much progression in my training over my last couple of years because I was always just running too hard. And what happens is if you run too hard too often, you can't progress too much. That's just the deal. Because you're never giving your body time to soak up the training and then move forward. And there's a lot of different ways you can do more. For me, I was limiting more to more mileage and more intensity. And the problem is it's really hard to do both of those things at the same time. And that's what I was trying to do. And this isn't a fault of my coaches. This is on me because I was the one that was telling them I feel good. I was the one that was telling them that the recovery runs were fine. I was the one that was saying I should be in these pace groups or I should be doing these paces or this feels good. And looking back, I had so many exclamation points in my training logs, my running logs, on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays. And let me just tell you, you don't want exclamation points on those days. You want exclamation points on race day. What you want is weeks and weeks and months and years of just periods at the end of sentences describing your training on weekdays. That's what you want. You want to be within yourself on those days. It doesn't mean you're not going to have hard workouts. Of course you're going to have hard workouts. And yes, sometimes those workouts are going to be brutal. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they have to be specific and pointed. They have to have purpose. There has to be a reason why we're working out so hard on this day. But you shouldn't have a workout like that every week. You shouldn't have 15 of those a season. Most of your workouts should be hard. Period. Not hard, exclamation point. That's what I'm saying. Your recovery runs should be solid. Period. Not so fast. Crushed the recovery run. I mean, if you're using some wild adjectives on your recovery run days to describe the run, you're doing too much. Unless the adjectives are about the scenery, the conversation, how much fun you had, fine. But if it's about the pace or the effort, you're doing the wrong thing. So I ran too hard on non-race days, which is why I really think I couldn't run as hard as I wanted to or believed I should on race day. I have a long period of my career where I'm like, I don't know why the racing wasn't turning out the way I thought it should. And hindsight is, 2020. It's because I thought I was going to run so well on the weekend because I was running so hard during the week. I had all these exclamation points, which make me believe, well, I'm going to have an exclamation point on the weekend. The problem was you have a limited supply of exclamation points in any given season. And I used up all of mine on workouts on a Tuesday and on hilly recovery runs on a Thursday. I used them all up. So when it came time for Saturday and I was lining up for a 1,500 or a 5K, it was period. Wah, wah, wah. That's basically what it was because I ran too hard. So you got to check yourself sometimes. And I would imagine that if I asked other runners that were competing at that level where you're trying to qualify for the Olympic trials or you're trying to break 4 minutes in the mile, I would imagine if you asked elite athletes, they would say they ran too hard. I would say the majority of them, if you went and said, hey, if you could change one thing about your training that you think if you changed would lead to you running better, I think most would say they ran too hard. Okay, I got another one. I became a better runner over the course of my career, but I became a worse athlete. Now, some of this has to do with strength training, but some of it has to do with cross training, and some of it has to do with just incorporating the sports I loved into my life. Because what I did was I kept them at arm's length. The more intense I got with my running, the less I did anything else. And some of it was because I didn't want to get hurt. I was so worried about getting hurt. But what I failed to realize at the time was one of the reasons why I was prone to injury during certain periods of my career was because I had ceased to be an athlete and I had only become a runner. Runners tend to get hurt. Athletes don't. Athletes tend to stay healthy. And I had become less athletic the faster I got. And what I needed to do, honestly, was just play other sports. I needed to mix things up. I needed to go out and play some tennis and play some basketball with some friends. I needed to have some fun playing other sports. And I think if I had done that, not only would I have been more athletic and therefore less likely to get hurt, I think I would have also enjoyed my running more. I really do. I think having an outlet in another sport will help you in the sport that you focus on. I really, truly believe that. Now, I'm not saying to be irresponsible with what you're doing. I'm not saying, hey, if you've got a big speed workout, you should be playing, 2 hours of pickup basketball beforehand. I'm not saying that if you just did a long run, that afterwards you should go play soccer, global football, on very fatigued legs. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying when the opportunity presents itself, and there will be opportunities, believe me, to go out and play. I should have just gone out and played. I really should have. And I think I should have incorporated, going back to the strength training, more dynamic drills. They were just being introduced to us when I started running at Nike. And in fact, we were the post-collegiate athletes. They were introduced to us by the Stanford runners. We hadn't done drills. We had a collection of maybe 20, 30 runners from different universities all over the United States. And we came out here to train in Palo Alto, California for the Nike Farm Team. We didn't do drills. We did not. We would warm up, we would stretch, we would run or work out. That was the gig. And it wasn't until the Stanford team they were the dominant team in the NCAA at that time. They taught us how to do drills. The hurdle drills, the dynamic drills, the ladder drills, the whole thing. That's when we started doing it. So we were 22, 23, 24 being taught drills by 19 and 20-year-olds. So that, I think, earlier in my career and doing more of that stuff later in my career, I think it would have, given me a better chance to break 4 minutes. So play more sports. play more games, have more fun doing both of those things, and also incorporate the athleticism that comes with certain drills and dynamic drills and movements. I think all of that put together really, really would have helped. Okay, another reason why, it's crazy, there's so many reasons why I didn't break 4. You're probably like, obviously you weren't going to break 4. Geez, look at all these things that you could have done or didn't do or should have done better. Well, this is what's a fun exercise, okay? I have no problem breaking this stuff down. I think it's a very healthy thing to do. Okay, so another one, I would race the clock instead of my competition. And this was especially true the last couple years I raced. Maybe not as much in college because you're wearing a team jersey and there's points on the line, a lot of it. But when I was running for Nike, I definitely had an unhealthy focus on the clock and my time, and I was not paying enough attention to the competition. And what I mean by that is I wanted to break 4 minutes, so if we went through 800 meters and it was 2:02 at 800 meters, I'm thinking, oh, geez, we're really slow. No, we're not going to break 4. As opposed to being like, hey, I'm in 4th place. Keep your eye on the leader. Make sure there aren't any breaks that are opening up. Somebody's coming up on my right. Like we're going to, position ourselves so with 1 lap to go, we're where we want to be on the back straightaway. We can get free. I wasn't thinking like I was racing anybody. And as a result, there were a lot of races where at 800 meters or 1,200 meters into this 4-lap race, so 2 laps, 3 laps into the race, I kind of sort of gave up because the clock wasn't lending itself to this being a sub 4-minute mile attempt. And yet, in those races, sometimes the people who won or got second or got third broke 4. Now, if I had competed, if I had tried to win races, if I tried to beat the athletes around me, I would have had a better chance at beating the clock. But since I was always focused on the clock and not on the race, a lot of times I didn't race. I time trialed. And guess what? There's not that much excitement when you're racing the clock as opposed to when you're racing other people. So compete with the people. That's what I should have done. And if I had done that, I would have been more competitive in the races. And if you're more competitive in your races, you will eventually get the times. Learn how to race smart, learn how to race gritty, and guess what? That's how you have a better chance at getting the time. You don't necessarily get the time because of the splits. Sometimes you get the time because of the competition. And the easiest way to get your splits is to take advantage of the competition. And I didn't do that. I was racing the clock instead of my competition, and as a result, the clock beat me every single time. And I think if I was trying to beat my competitors, I would have found at the end of the race, I beat the clock too. In fact, if I look at my personal bests in just about everything, the 800, 1500, the mile, the 5K, every single time I set a personal best, I'm pretty sure it was in a really great race. Or at least I felt like I had raced really well. And I think that was the magic, was when I went in there and I had fun and I competed and I just raced, the time took care of itself. So I usually tell people, especially race weekends, whether it's the half marathon, the marathon, or anything like that, and they want some advice, I usually say, if your number one goal is a time, bump it down. Have your number one goal be that you're going to race as best as you can. Because if you race as best as you can, you will also give yourself the best opportunity to get the time you want. But if the goal is the time, that doesn't mean you're going to race your best. And if you don't race your best, you have less of a chance of achieving your time goal. So if you need to, just rewind that last part because it's a pretty important part, okay? All right. Yes, there is more. Okay, I think the last thing I can bring up here is I stopped too soon. This is an even bigger woulda, coulda, shoulda. What if I had gone one more year? And I think I'd built up that I was going to stop when I did because it just was like a nice bookend. It was an Olympic year. I wasn't going to make the Olympics. That wasn't my goal. My goal was to make the Olympic trials. But I always thought, okay, that's a good time. you're going to graduate college. There'll be 2 Olympics that you can train through when you're running for Nike. And at the end of 2004, you can just stop. And I think I probably should have gone for 1 more year. And I'm not saying I would have broken 4, because I'm not saying I would have broken 4 if I had strength trained better. I'm not saying I would have broken 4 if I didn't run too hard. I'm not saying I would have broken 4 if I had raced my competition instead of the clock, partied less, became a better athlete instead of just a better runner. No. But what I am saying is that if I'd given it another year, I would have had another year. That's all I'm saying. And I stopped in 2004, and that was it. And I had a couple of friends on the team that I ran for that went an extra year, and they had huge, huge breakthroughs. And I think part of it is because it wasn't an Olympic year. My favorite meet of all, it's not the Olympics, it's the U.S. Olympic trials. And the reason why is because I know how many athletes down there are potentially 1 race away from their career lasting another year, 2 years, 3 years, or 1 race away from their career being over, done, at least at that level. So the amount of pressure and intensity and anxiety at that meet is through the roof. And I think the amount of pressure in the last year I ran, where I was thinking, you got to run these times, because if you run these times, you make the Olympic trials, and this is it, it's done. I think that held me back a little bit, as opposed to having a year where it's not about trying to get into some meet. You're just training and you're racing. Those non-Olympic years, non-world championship years too, are much more relaxed. You can try different events. The intensity is there, but not at the same way, because usually people are running through that year and probably the next one because there's a world championship, or they're running in an off year into the next year because it's an Olympic year. So it's kind of this build-up. The vibe is much looser. And I think if I'd gone another year where it wasn't about trying to get a specific time to get into a certain meet, and I just trained with a little bit less stress and tension in my life based on the running. The running was what was creating it. I think I would have run better. I think I would have run faster. So I think I stopped too soon. It's great to have a goal. It's great to have a high purpose. Like, I'm going to try to do this at this meet this year. But it's amazing. Breakthroughs can happen at any time, not just during those most important years. A lot of times the bigger breakthroughs happen when you're at your most relaxed, when you feel your most comfortable, when there's less pressure. Okay? So I think the last reason why I didn't break 4 really just comes down to the fact that I ended too soon. And does that make me a little sad? A teeny little bit. And that's okay. See, this is the thing. When I tell people about like the fact that I had a couple big goals and I didn't reach any of them. I wanted to qualify for the Olympic trials. I got close, didn't make it. Wanted to break 4 in the mile, got close, didn't do it. Does it bum me out? A little bit. Of course it does. I would have rather have done it. Absolutely. But I'm very proud that I went after it. Really proud that I went after it. And now I know that I went after it and I didn't get it, as opposed to I didn't try. So my coulda, woulda, shouldas are based on the fact that I did a try. And that's what I'm proud of. I know what the reasons are, and it wasn't because I didn't try. See, that's the most important part. If I hadn't dedicated 12, 14 years to doing this, and this podcast would have been really short. It would have been, here are the reasons why I didn't break 4. I never tried. That really would have me in the shower crying every day. So, that's the episode. I hope some of this maybe you can relate to, or maybe you can learn from this and say, hey, I'm not doing some of these things, or I can adjust, I can change, and maybe you get closer to achieving your goal, or you do this same exercise and you learn from yourself. And if you can do that, you are a smarter version of yourself. And that smarter version of yourself is a better version of yourself. And that better version of you has a better chance at achieving whatever goal you want to achieve. that's the episode. Thank you for listening. By the way, 1,500 times 343, mile time is 403. There you go. Have a good one. And until the next episode, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and I'll meet you on another starting line.
Thank you so much for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast today. And if you haven't already subscribed or set yourself as a follower to the podcast, I really hope you would. And make sure you check out the show notes, because in those show notes, you're going to find a link to Coach Bennett's newsletter and all the social media sites I'm on, like Instagram and Threads and Cameo and Blue Sky and Nope, not on that one anymore. So all the ones I am on, you're going to find it in the show notes, so check that out as well. And as always, thank you again for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast. Until next time, you keep taking care of yourself and each other.